Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 111, where I speak with Noel Berry. In this episode, we talk about the draw of smaller games, how they got into the industry, words of encouragement, games that got them interested in making games, comfort games, games they've been enjoying lately, their life outside of gaming, and some lightning round questions. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about Noel as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 111. Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Noel Berry, developer at Extremely OK Games. Hi, Noel. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to be here, for making time. I really appreciate you being here. I just appreciate you, letting me steal your evening.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, thanks for taking the time to talk with me. I'm excited to get into it.
Awesome. I'm always happy to hear that because, the little voice in the back of my head is always worried that people are just secretly like, why did I agree to do this? And being mad at themselves for it.
I mean, yeah, no, besides from like mild stage fright I always have from talking, I like doing stuff like this. It's fun.
I have good news for you. There is no audience, so there isn't much to be scared of on the stage right now. But if it does help, you can picture all of the fictional audience members in their underwear, if that helps you at all.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that throughout the talk.
Oh, Noel, I am curious. So before we get started, would you mind like giving like the elevator pitch of like who you are, like the 411, or more or less like the quick shot fire of like the things you feel everyone should know about you? Just that way we have an even baseline of like the who you are, because I didn't do a really good introduction in terms of the big list of things, and I'm sure there was probably some things you would like people to know about, right?
Yeah, so I'm an independent game developer from Canada. I've been making video games for I think like almost 20 years. I started making stuff when I was a kid around 2004, 2005. The most like prominent thing that people would know is I was the co-creator of Celeste, which is like an indie platformer from 2018. And then before and after that, I made a lot of smaller stuff and keep making games now. So yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that. And obviously, outside of the many accolades that Celeste deserves, all the accolades I'm sure you've heard for, not to diminish them or try and like brush away me saying I found Celeste a fantastic game and I really enjoyed it. But that's awesome that you've been doing this for so long. And like, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it so it's not diminutive or whatever. But like that you made such an you were part of making such an awesome game and are still working on like still working towards other things. Like a few years back, I think it was a few years back at least, your contributions to Celeste 64, I believe it was, as a
Yeah.
as a game jam or whatever, what have you. I shouldn't say or whatever. But like just the continuing to work at things and like wanting to do things. I just think it's awesome off the back of like such a smash hit. I hope what I'm trying to say makes sense because I'm starting to worry it doesn't.
No, I hear you. Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I've always liked making stuff, and I feel like I've kind of just kept doing that from since I started making games as a kid. So I feel like I kind of found one thing that I liked a lot, like making games when I was like 13, and I just kind of kept doing it forever. So before and after Celeste, I've just kind of been in the same mode of just making small things. And so that's like my one the thing that I just do. So yeah, I think I'll always be making stuff, regardless of how successful or unsuccessful they are afterwards. Just because it's what I find myself doing, what I like doing with my time.
So I am curious about this, and I hope this makes sense. But what is the draw to making what is your draw to making smaller things outside of the fact that you just like making things? I hope
Yeah,
that makes sense because I know that that can probably be like a weird backhanded question, you
no,
know?
I don't find it at all. I think I mean I like making smaller games, like even Celeste on a scale, it is a smaller game by a lot, like a lot of compared to a lot of things. But I think the thing that I like about making smaller stuff is that it's a smaller team. And I like working with smaller groups of people on things. I think because I like wearing many hats, I like doing lots of different parts of the game. And when you're working on something small, you can kind of do all sorts of stuff. So I like, programming some days, I like doing pixel art other days, I like messing with shaders another day. And all that stuff is a lot easier to do when you're working on like a small project where you can kind of bounce around. Um, so I think that's the main draw for me is just one, it's something uh, that I can achieve in a small group, and then it's also like I like doing all the different kinds of roles, I guess.
So thank you to speaking that, and I understand what you mean. I think that's really interesting. Just the like the folks being like, I get to throw myself into doing all sorts of things, and like the things that you might not get a whole lot of exposure to, right?
Yeah,
Um, that is something I've tried to do with different things, and it's like I understand the challenge and the enjoyment of the challenge. And then also, in my case, at least, I don't know about yours, but like running into the limits of your capabilities and be like,
totally.
okay, I'm not going to do this again, and walking away graciously or
Yeah,
gracefully.
I like that. No, I like that stuff too. And I like learning new things. So when I feel like you're working on smaller games with a smaller group of people, you kind of have to learn new things all the time, because if you want to add something to the game that you don't really know you don't really know how, you kind of just have to learn it, because it's a small team, so you have to do it. Uh, so I like that aspect of it too. And sometimes, yeah, you hit hard barriers of like, oh yeah, this is too much for us, and that's okay. But other times you learn something new and get to make something cool with it. So yeah, I like that.
So no, I think this is a good time to ask this, just because I think it's a fitting moment for it. But like, you mentioned that you've been doing this for about 20 years, um, and making like small things all throughout. I'm wondering, like, how is it that you got into developing and making games? Like, was there a time or like a specific region, like this is what I want to do, or was it just sort of like you found yourself in a moment where you're like, this feels like a natural evolution of the things I'm playing around with? Like, is there
Yeah.
anything that made you get into it? And like, what might have that been? Or like, how, or what have you? Sorry, I'm rambling and I should just shut
No,
up.
you're good. Uh, yeah, no, I mean, the main thing is that I like video games as a kid. I liked them a lot. I was playing video games all the time. And I think there's at some point where my dad, I think, was like, you play video games a lot. Maybe you should try looking into how they're made, which is a really cool thing for a parent to do, I think, because I wouldn't, I don't know if I would have thought of that on my own, to try making them. But yeah, at the time he was like, why don't you spend all this time playing them, why don't you look into how they're made? And I think I just Googled at that point, like Game Maker or something, and found, the Game Maker tool. Um, and I started messing around with that. And I think at first I found Game Maker kind of hard. So I remember experimenting with like RPG Maker, and some other random tools. I can't remember the name of it. There was like a tool where you could kind of like, I think it was like some kind of turtle, and you could like, give it commands and it would draw stuff on the screen. But yeah, there's a few different tools that I tried, and ultimately, after a while, I kind of settled into Game Maker, um, and started using that a lot. And I used that for years, and it was a great kind of tool to learn how to make stuff in. Um, and yeah, and I think around the same time I started playing indie games. So before I was only playing, things like Nintendo games on the Super Nintendo and stuff. And then around, I guess, 2004, 2005, I started looking into actual like indie games on the PC. So I found Cave Story. And that was kind of a moment of like, wow, someone, one person made this game. And I was kind of messing around with Game Maker. And that's kind of, I think that game specifically made me be like, I want to try doing this, because this was made by one person, and I'm one person, so maybe I can make stuff. Um, and yeah, I don't, for a long time, I didn't think it would be a career. I thought it would be something I did for fun. But I liked doing game stuff a lot. So I thought I would be like a web designer or something. I used to do a lot of web design, and I used to do a lot of contract web design work before games started making money for me. So it was kind of this thing I always really enjoyed, but I didn't really know if it would be a full-time job until I've been making games for probably 10 years or so. Yeah.
So two things that I want to follow up with for this one, just because you mentioned web design. Now this could be a controversial question. I apologize if it is, but how do you feel that the marquee tool eventually went out of vogue?
Yeah, I think that's pretty disappointing. I think that yeah, every site should have a secret yeah, marquee and flashing text and stuff. Those animated GIFs and yeah, those all could come back.
The old GeoCity special.
Yeah, I think those deserve you know deserve a new place in 2025.
Thank you for that. I know that's controversial, and I'm happy to hear that we are on the same page for the marquee tool. As a quick aside, for a while I was working for a company and we did and we well it was a web design, like website making, what have you. And I went to the person I worked for, his name was John. And I was like, "Hey John, I think I know what this site needs." He's like, "Okay, like, please, what do you think it needs? What can we do?" And I'm like, "It needs marquees." And he basically, in the middle of an actual like meeting, went silent for about 30 seconds, just went, "Do not ask that again. No, no will always be the answer to that question." And I'm like, "But I can do it. There's JavaScript stuff for now." He's like, "No, do not do not bring that up again. That's your only time I'll say it."
That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah, I don't
so
even know if modern browsers, if like the HTML for that stuff works anymore, or if you have to like re-implement it in JavaScript and stuff now.
I don't actually remember. All I remember is I did look into it and found a JavaScript library to do it. So like right now my brain is saying probably not, but
Yeah.
HTML5 stuff has gotten wacky, so it could just be a CSS track now, right?
Yeah, totally.
But no, thank you for that. Outside of that, I'm wondering, do you have any like words of encouragement for anyone else that might be looking to like follow in your footsteps or get into game development or however you would like to take that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think getting into games, like the biggest thing with that kind of thing, is to just start doing it. Um, and that sounds, uh, I mean, that sounds, I guess, easier said than done, but like, I think it is like there's a lot of really cool small tools out there to make small games and experiment with. And I think that can be a really great stepping stone to kind of making, larger games later. But just being able to make smaller stuff in like Pico 8 or Game Maker, or honestly any tool, whatever tool you find the most comfortable to just like start making stuff in, and just actually start making stuff. Because I think it's easy to kind of get hung up on ideas or what's the right tool or how do I learn all these things. And I think the best way to actually start is to just download whatever program looks the most appealing and just start hacking away on stuff. Because yeah, I think it's easy to get hung up on all of the details and not actually just try making stuff. Because once you actually start making stuff, even if it's really small and something like Pico 8 or whatever, you can kind of get an idea for like what is possible, especially as a solo developer, and that can kind of like help direct your game ideas and stuff like that.
So thank you. I think that's wonderful words of encouragement. And like I as someone that has tried a handful of times throughout their life to like figure out how to make video games, one of the things that I always got caught up on was kind of like you touched on, like trying to find the perfect, like trying to find the engine or the best way to do it,
Yeah,
or like what have you. And instead of just picking one and doing it, I'd get lost in trying to like weigh the pros and cons of things that ultimately don't matter at that stage of just trying to figure out how to recreate Pong. You know what I mean?
yeah, totally.
Um, so like, thank you. I think that's just wonderful words of encouragement.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that as a kid when I was making stuff, that stuff like it was easier to not care about that stuff because at the time when I was like 13 or 14, I didn't know about what tools were good or what things could you make or anything. It was just like I have this one tool called Game Maker. and so I'm just making stuff in it. So I think as a kid, it honestly made it easier because I wasn't trying to think of all this like extra stuff. It was just like, there's the tool on my computer, and I'm just making stuff. So being able to capture that at all of just like not worrying about, yeah, all the other stuff and just sitting down and messing with the tool is yeah, really good.
Um, however, I will suggest from personal experience, the first thing you probably shouldn't do is try and learn to make a game on the Nintendo DS, just because that's a wild thing to do when you have multiple solutions to do elsewhere. In my case, this was like in 2007, by the way. So like my brain was like, I play the DS. I should make a game for the DS, and you know, that's just like C. Don't do that. Don't
Yeah,
don't
that
don't make the
sounds
same dumb mistake I did.
that
Pick
does sound
something
really
at
cool
least
though.
easy.
That does sound really fun, but yeah, yeah, maybe not as the first tool, but that does sound like a fun project to try at some point.
I'm not gonna lie. My Hello World was making the screens flash different colors, and then I sort of just got overwhelmed and never touched it again.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I feel like jumping to like C on a homebrew console thing would be a hard. Yeah, it might be like the wall is too high to get over it right at the start. But if you work your way up to that, then that sounds pretty good.
Probably would have, yes. I'm not the brightest person, so yeah, I just sort of ran headfirst into that wall and called it quits. Probably rightfully so. I needed baby steps. I definitely didn't take them.
Yeah.
So no, I am curious though, because like you said that you were playing a lot of games, and like your father, which I think you're absolutely correct, that especially 20 or so years ago, to have your father be like, hey, you like doing this a lot. Why don't you look into making them, see what that's about? Um, I'm wondering, was there like a game you were playing a whole bunch of, or were there like some other games that like you were playing that when he said that you were like, oh yeah, this is what I could be doing, or was it just gaming in general that sort of got you to that point?
No, it's definitely like at the time. I think it was a lot of Link to the Past. I think that's the game that kind of, I mean, yeah, for the Super Nintendo, that I like that a lot. And I feel like that's probably one of the games that kind of made me think about making games. Um, just because, especially once I found Game Maker and it was doing 2D stuff, the N64 was out, and I was playing a lot of N64 stuff too. But 3D seemed really hard, and I don't think I even like registered being able to make 3D stuff. So I feel like a reference point for me was always A Link to the Past, just because it was really integral to like me growing up and me learning about video games, and then also trying to make stuff because it was a 2D game. So I used to make like I made a lot of Link to the Past and Link's Awakening clones that were really bad in Game Maker. I would just go to like the Spreader's resource and rip out Zelda sprites and just recreate Zelda games. So it's definitely like top-down Zelda was I think kind of jumping off point for me for like, oh, I want to try making this too, because it seemed possible. Whereas even though I was playing a lot of N64 stuff at the time too, like Ocarina of Time and Smash Bros and whatever, those didn't feel as like I didn't see a direct through line as much.
So, thank you for sharing that. And I can 100% agree with just, the fantasticness of Link to the Past. And I can also understand
Yes, your
um
podcast name is Red Tunic.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And I can also definitely understand the like just grabbing the sprites and like reusing them or gently touching them up, or what have you, what
mhm,
have you.
mhm.
Like there was I don't know if you're aware of this, and if you are, it'll be a really funny cut for me. But like there was a whole game, online MMO kind of thing, quote unquote, called Grawl Online. That was their entire aesthetic, was basically the Link to the Past sprite sheet, um,
That's awesome.
in an online world.
That's actually awesome. I've not heard of that. I'm gonna look it up. That sounds really funny.
If you're going to look it up, I think most of it has been scrubbed in terms of like where their origins lied, but it would be Grawl Online Classic,
Yeah,
probably the
makes
last I
sense.
looked into it. But yeah, like it literally was just them ripping the Link to the Past sprite sheet and like doing some tweaks after
Yeah.
I think someone went, "Hey, we could probably get sued for this."
Yeah. That's great. No, I'm seeing pictures on just Google Images. That's really awesome. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it was basically a link to the past online. Like that's pretty much the short and long of it. If you're
Yeah,
like, how did it play? It played like Zelda. That's pretty much the short and long of it. But sorry, just you mentioning that, I was like, I have an opportunity to bring up something random that maybe on like a weird chance you heard of, but no one ever has. No one ever has.
but yeah, it was a lot of stuff like this though. Like I was basically doing the same thing. It's just not online and not to this not to this level, but yeah, basically just ripping the sprites. And then yeah, we would touch them up sometimes or change them, probably make them worse, honestly. But um, it was fun.
But no, all the same, thank you for sharing that. I like the idea of basically you just recreating, making your own little Zelda games, before, years and years before, as I'm sure many have, years and
Hmm.
years before anyone made a actual, like Zelda maker, kind of like, I forget the name. There's
Yeah,
two of them right now, I think, but like it's taken this long to do it, and yet I imagine you're not unique, in the approach of doing what you were doing, right? Like it's just weird
yeah,
that
no,
it's took
definitely
this
not.
long.
There's a bunch of like even I'm not going to be able to remember any of the names, but I remember even at the time playing other people's Zelda likes or Zelda clones, even from Game Maker days. So yeah.
But no, as I said, all the same, thank you for sharing that. And I'm wondering, this might be a an easy answer or an easy uh in for this one. But like, did you have any favorite games? And if it was Link to the Past or Link's Awakening, or the top down 2Ds or what have you, by all means, that's a fair answer. But like, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, like, did you have any favorite games, and like what was it that made that game be your favorite game, or those games be your favorite game?
Yeah, I mean, I think Link to the Past is definitely one of them. Cave Story is another one for sure. I think both those games are pretty um, important to how I think I make games and why I make games. So I think whenever people ask me like, "Oh, what's your favorite game?" Those are the two that I just immediately go back to of like, yeah, these are the two games that I really loved, and I still love. I feel like if I played them completely fresh now in 2025, I would have some opinions, but in terms of just like these are my favorite games, I think those are like the most direct answer for those two. Um, just because I feel like they one inspired me a lot, like in terms of what I like making, and then they're also just really fun. So yeah, um, yeah.
So, you kind of opened the door for this one. I can't not try and walk through it, or at least push it open further. But I'm wondering, like, what do you mean by you'd have some thoughts? And I don't mean this in like a negative way or what have you. I'm just curious about what you think those thoughts might be if you tried to play
Mm.
it like fresh today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's hard to answer exactly because I can't. It's impossible for me to play them
Yeah,
fresh
yeah, yeah.
today. I feel like there's probably design stuff, from the '90s that I'm not as into anymore as was when I was 10, or at that time. And not even because I was 10, but just because I think ideas and like design has changed. I think that Nintendo has honestly always been pretty good at this because I like things that feel like toys, and I like things that don't waste my time. And I feel like Nintendo's always really good at that. And I think Cave Story is really good at that too, where it's not they're not spending a lot of time making me do things that aren't fun, or like they're not. If I die, they don't send me back way, 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 way back and make me repeat the same thing over and over again. So I honestly think, and those are kind of my biggest things that I find annoying about old games, and they're both, um, I think, quite good at that. But I still feel like there's probably bits that show their age. And things that I'm having a hard time immediately thinking of things like in them that I change. I bet if I played them live and was thinking about it as I was playing them, I could come up with stuff better. But yeah, I think it's just stuff that shows their age from like a 30-year-old game, and Cave Story now a 20-year-old, 21-year-old game. Um, that I think just mostly about just things being faster, um, or so on. I'm trying to think. I'm having a hard time thinking about specific things, but um, yeah.
So Thank you for answering or attempting to answer that, not to dismiss. I just I'm
No,
attempting the understanding of like, yeah, I kind of blindsided you with that, and like force you to be in the position of like, how do I even comprehend this when I'm not playing it live and fresh again? You know what I mean? But thank you.
yeah,
I appreciate the attempt, and I would I understand and I agree. Like I one of the things that offends me about games, and not just games now, just in general, is like the feeling that my time isn't appreciated, or like that, that it's not a consideration in what I'm doing, right? Like some
totally.
of the back and forth and like all of that. Um so like I yeah, 100% I understand the not like the pacing maybe might be the wrong word, but the pacing of those games, especially because I enjoyed Cave Story when I played it as well. I played it once or twice at least.
Hmm.
Link to the Past, a few more. Like I 100% know what you mean by like it's not abusing your time, and that like even I know that saying that or thinking about that, some people might think, oh well, yeah, you went a little further back when you died, big deal, but like at the same time sometimes if you do that a bunch, suddenly that's a few hours gone, and you're like, I don't. If you don't have that much free time, like as you get older or what have you, a few hours ends up being a lot of time if
Yeah,
the game was only 10 hours, right?
totally. It adds up really fast. And I mean, I like hard games. I like games that are difficult, but I don't. And there's a balance there too about like, you want stakes, so you don't want it so that you just, if you die, nothing happens and you just keep going. So I understand there's a balance there for sure. But I definitely don't have as much patience for stuff that sends me back so far back that I'm just replaying the same thing. Like once I've kind of feeling like I've beaten something, I don't want to like, go back half an hour and have to just repeat the same thing that I've done, now a dozen times or whatever, just to get to the hard part. So, I definitely feel like, yeah, I just don't have the patience for that stuff anymore as much as I used to. But yeah, honestly, I think that Link to the Past and Cave Story are both pretty good at, you know, um, they're pretty good at that, honestly. I mean, Link to the Past is 30 years old, more. So I think it's actually does a pretty good job of that, honestly.
Yes, yeah, again, like I understand, I completely agree. And I'm wondering in the case of, because Link to the Past obviously hasn't had a remaster or a remake or a whatever, however you want to phrase that. Um, but like Link's Awakening got an
Hmm.
interesting one. We got a pseudo sequel, The Link to the Past,
Yeah,
with the Zelda game. I like the Zelda focused game, I believe it was a pseudo sequel.
yeah,
As well as A Link Between Worlds being an actual sequel, says my
totally,
memory
yeah.
at least. I'm wondering how you felt about like the remakes, like not in the same sense of like did you feel that they like didn't abuse your time or what have you, but just as like a general thing. Because like I played those games, I enjoyed those games. Um, so yeah, I'm just wondering like how you felt about getting to go back to them, or that world, or however the case of three different games and what have you. But like how it felt to like go back to that
Yeah,
style, I think
yeah.
is the way maybe to put it.
I think overall I like them. Like I like Link Between Worlds a lot. I mean, I haven't played it since it came out. So it came out and I remember just like playing through it immediately like the day it launched. And I think I played it almost in one sitting. I just like sat there and played through all of it and it was like that was really fun. And then I don't know if I don't think I've played it again since then. So I forget when that came out, 2014 or something like that. Um so it's been a little while, but I did remember like enjoying it a lot. And then the Link's Awakening remakes, so the Link's Awakening remake, I didn't play myself. I watched a lot of streamers play it because I liked watching the speedruns of it a lot. So I watched a lot of speedruns, but I don't think I personally played it. And then the new Zelda game, the Zelda game, I did play through. I beat that. I guess I beat that. I don't know when that came out. A few months ago. I beat it pretty much a week or two after it came out. Um, and I enjoyed that game, but I did have problems with it. Specifically, like I actually feel like it was very slow in a lot of the dialogue and stuff like that. It felt like the dialogue to me um, wasn't very interesting. Like it felt like almost like it had a lot of text for the sake of the text. and I was almost like, I just want to play the game because it wasn't giving me a lot to like uh, find interesting, I guess. It would have stuff where you'd walk into a room and a cutscene would start, and it would be like, it would like look over at like Yeti tracks and be like, are those Yeti tracks? I think they are. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I was gonna find that out in 1 second when I looked at the room. But it would do that kind of thing a lot, which I mean, I kind of get it, but I wish that it felt like it didn't give me room to kind of explore as much because it had to put like dialogue there for the sake of the dialogue, quite often, which slowed the game down a lot. But I did enjoy aspects of that game quite a bit still. Like I liked running around in the world. I liked some of the powers. But yeah, I bounced off that game a bit more than I still beat it, but it didn't stick with me as much as the other games.
So you mentioning that, it reminds me of the God of War Ragnarok discourse about how the 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 characters, your partners, what have you, however you want to phrase it, that they would help along with like puzzles or what have you.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people really got annoyed with those, and I personally had no issue with it. They took about 30, 60, 90 seconds in most cases before they were like, hey, do you think maybe that thing would help?
Yeah,
But like walking into a room and having it give you the equivalent of like the puzzle solution right away, being like, hey, maybe those
yeah,
footsteps are things you want. That, yeah, I 100% understand how that would like pull you, but it's kind of like the opposite of like respecting your time, and
yeah.
it's like it's not respecting your agency, maybe.
Yeah, it feels like it's not trusting the player as much to just, actually play the game. And I mean, they might have added that stuff because of testing and people weren't getting stuff. But then I definitely think the answer in that case is to try to make, redesign the space or work on it feels like a very kind of slapped on, just like, oh, we want you to notice this and we don't really care. So we'll just force a bunch of dialogue boxes so that you have to care. But which is kind of funny because I ended up not like I got bored of the dialogue, so I would just like manage through it and not read any of it because it was never like it was never of consequence, the dialogue. Um, so yeah, it didn't that didn't work super well for me. Um, but I don't know, I enjoyed a lot of the aspects of the game. I felt like some of the powers, it might have been neat if they like I enjoyed like the enemies and stuff, but I thought it might be cool if well, actually I have a few thoughts about the stuff. Is one, I don't think that you should be able to play. I don't know if you played it or not, but I felt like you shouldn't be able to play as Link. Like there's this mode in it where you kind of turn into Link for a bit, and then you slash and stuff, and you have Link's powers, and then you turn back into Zelda and use your you can use the replicating ability again. And I felt that was a bit of like I felt they should have just gone all in on the Zelda powers because it felt almost like nervous. Like they were like, well, we're not going to make a Zelda game without any Link. So we're still going to add these bits of Link. So if a puzzle's really annoying or a boss bit's annoying, you can still kind of like turn into Link and slash for a while and then, do it that way. And I felt like it would have been more fun if they kind of just embraced the Zelda abilities and just gone full in on that. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
So I understand. I can understand where you're coming from with that. Like I personally haven't played it, and that's largely just because trying to think of the way to phrase it. Um, my backlog's like huge, and it's like one of those
Yeah.
things where it's like, do I play this or do I buy a new game? And it's like I shouldn't be buying new games, and then I buy a different new game like a moron. But like that's I haven't played it for that reason. It's just it hasn't fit
That's very fair. Yeah.
into the timing or what have you. But I understand what you're saying, and like I read other people's opinions on that, and I didn't realize that the link mode was kind of like the like star power, I guess is what it sort of sounds like, and the
Yeah, it's
the trump card, I guess.
yeah, you can kind of turn it on to like fight stuff. When it felt like uh I mean they tried to balance it because it's very like timed. You can only have it on for a certain amount of time. But yeah, I felt like if you're making this cool mechanic about like spawning or cloning things or whatever, and trying to make interesting combat and interesting spaces with that, I thought they should have just embraced it, instead of being like, well, okay, you'd still be Link for sometimes, to fight stuff, and it felt like, well, it would be cool. I think it would be cooler if you just tried to fully embrace the the powers that Zelda has, and try to explore that even more than they did. I think some ways, like some stuff that made it trickier to do that maybe was because like certain powers you couldn't really control that well, because you'd spawn an enemy and you are just spawning that enemy and it would run around and do its own behavior. So it might need some tweaks in terms of like how spawning stuff, maybe if they had more discrete behaviors of like you spawn this guy and he just runs straight forward until he hits a wall and then vanishes and stuff like that, to make it work better in kind of combat stuff. But yeah, I kind of felt like it would be more fun if they tried to just fully embrace the Zelda's abilities.
Yes, I understand completely what you mean by that, and like I said, I haven't played it, but I can make an easy, in my mind at the very least, like an easy comparison or analogy, and it's like having the usefulness and predictability of something you pop out, like with an enemy, like you said, instead of it just sort of spawning and wandering around until it did a thing, being like straightforward, do X and then peace out kind of thing. Like that's largely how I felt in Mega Man 2, or 3, or one of the Mega Mans, about like the weapons that you got were just like borderline, in my opinion, useless and not predictable at all. And like tightening that kind of thing up, like I can understand in any game wanting to have predictable or easily usable and predictable like abilities. It makes perfect sense, and like focusing on that, you're right, maybe would have helped a little better for some people's enjoyment, right?
Yeah, I think it's because ultimately because you could turn into Link and just slash stuff or shoot arrows or throw bombs, it kind of mitigated that aspect of it, because it's like, well, it's annoying to fight this thing with the powers I have, so I'll just turn into Link, slash it a bunch, and then kind of get around it that way. So it kind of felt like they didn't need to quite solve that stuff as much, because there was just you can just slash it if you need to, which it wasn't exactly like that, because you had to charge up the power to be able to slash. But anyways,
Yes, and not to like pull out the bat and get closer to the horse or what have you. For the sake of moving away from, I am going to do a rough transition to another question for us. That way we can leave that horse alone. I'm wondering, do you have a comfort game? Because I know this might be similar in the same vein as like a Link to the Past cave story, what have you. But like, do you have like a comfort game that you still think fondly of, or that you still go back to, or that is going to help you relax or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, one game I replay every now and then is Carol Blaster, which is also by the person who made Cave Story. But I like that game a lot, and it doesn't take very long to play through. It's pretty short, but it feels like it gets I don't know, it kind of hits. I like the vibe of that game a lot, I guess. I like the gameplay. I like the kind of the weird world you're in. It's just kind of a fun game to kind of play through quickly. So I replay that every now and then, just because I like it quite a bit. I like the music a lot too. Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that. I honestly, I haven't played it, and every time I see it, I go, "Oh, I should make a note of this," and I never do. So like, thank you, because I am actually right now making a note of it, and I'm going to try and remember to like, after we're done talking, add it to my wish list or add it to something, just so it's not one of those things that I go, "Oh yeah, I should remember this," and then just never look at it again,
Yeah, no, it's a good game. It's not too long. It doesn't take too long to play through. Can't like a few hours, but yeah, it's really fun.
That's an even bigger sell for me right now, because like my backlog is just massively filled with like JRPGs, and it's as anyone that has a backlog of JRPGs, that just makes you not want to play them, because like that's a the dreaded commitment to all of that. So like anytime I can avoid playing those games in the backlog with something that I can beat and like feel good about beating and be like, yeah, I played this and it's a fun game. That's I'm always gonna go to that over the others for the simplicity of it's quick, it's easy, it's a nice time.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying stuff that is like under 10 hours recently. If I can finish it in like 1 or 2 sessions, I find it much easier to be like, I will play that. Than the giant the giant games, which I sometimes enjoy. Like I do play giant games sometimes, but yeah, it's a lot harder. It's also harder for me to like, you know, jump off into them, I guess.
So two follow-up questions from that one. And they're kind of like the same question, just different sides of the coin, I guess. But like, because you mentioned earlier liking indie games, and in my mind, I liken indie games to shorter games. I know that's not always the truth, but I think that's just how my
Right.
brain is wired it. Um, like I'm wondering, what kind of shorter games have you been enjoying lately?
Um, yeah, let me think about what kind of shorter games I've been enjoying lately. What have I enjoyed recently? I have to think about it for a second. Um, I mean, I guess it's not. It's also not a super short game. I guess the game I've just been playing the most recently is been playing the Prince of Persia Metroidvania, which is not an indie game, and I guess it's not actually very short. But so maybe that's a bad answer. Uh, that's what I've been playing the most recently. Um, trying to think of things that I played that were kind of smaller recently. Uh, hmm. I played through. I mean, this is also not really a small game, but I played through UFO 50 a lot. I played a bunch of it. But that's 50 games. I mean, all the individual games are kind of small, but it's that game itself is huge. I don't know how they made that game. But I've been playing all the UFO 50 games, which have been fun. I played through Animal Well recently, which is also not tiny, but I think it's around 10 hours to play through, which I really enjoyed. Like I think those are the two like immediate ones that come to mind. Um, trying to think what else. I played a game called Sylvie Lime, which is like a platformer, an indie platformer, indie Metroidvania kind of game, which I also enjoyed. Um, yeah, those are the ones that are coming to mind immediately.
So, thank you for sharing that. And I I like the mention of UFO 50 because like it really does raise like I don't know if this is a philosophical question or what have you, but like it really does raise the question of is is UFO 50 a short game or a big game like a house of short games, or is it one big game with
Yeah,
a bunch of people in the house or what have you? Like I'm
yeah,
making
I
a
don't
horrible analogy, but I
know.
think
No,
you
I
know
hear
what I'm
you.
getting at.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I hear you. I don't know that game. I don't know how they made that game. I'm very impressed by it, and I really enjoy it. It's just quite fun.
Yes, I also have been slowly every now and then I go back to it, and like it's for me personally it hits the issue of having like all of the NES games easily available or all of the
Yeah,
Super Nintendo games, right? Like you play one, you go, oh, hit a wall, and like for me it's like the immediate feeling going, okay, I've got my fix, I can bounce off of it, but like
yeah,
for a game like UFO 50, I don't know if that's the right way to play it. So it's like it's hard for me because the lizard brain part of my head is just like, no, you're done. You died. You're done. Move to the next game like you would for like anything else.
yeah.
Like I can't do that. Like that's not what this is supposed to be about.
I mean I did a little bit. Like I play one, I get really into it, play it for a long time, and then I move to the next one and kind of bounce off of it and be like, I don't know, and just skip it kind of. But then the more I played, I found myself coming back to the ones that are like if I felt like I bounced off of it because I didn't feel like it was working for me, and then come back to it like way later. Oftentimes I found that I'd end up kind of liking it more than I originally did, and end up sinking a lot of time into it afterwards. Even if I bounced off it at first, just because I think almost all of them have some really interesting stuff going on. But yeah, I definitely have that at first, like kind of bounce off and be like, I'm just gonna try a different one, and then because there's 50 of them, so it's kind of it's really easy to be like, well, I didn't really like this one very much, so I'll just go pick one of the 50 other ones and dive into it. But even so, yeah, I found myself kind of coming back to ones that I originally like wasn't as sure about, um, which yeah, is cool.
So I'm curious because you mentioned UFO 50, and I don't know if it's going to be easy or hard, but like I'm wondering, like, is there some that you enjoyed more inside of that? Just mainly for my own knowledge of, I haven't played them all yet, and I'm always open to suggestions to games within the game. That's a weird thing to say in this
Yeah,
setup, but it makes sense.
yeah, I liked House Party a lot, which is like I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's like the deck building one kind of, but it's like a deck builder of like party guests. Um, that was one that I really liked. I don't know if you've seen that one. I like the cowboy one a lot, and I don't remember not the RPG. There's a cowboy like RPG in it that is huge, and I have not played through that yet. But the cowboy game that's like, um, it's like a train robbery game. I'm really bad at remembering the names, so I'm not gonna be able to remember any of the names. But it's like you're kind of like doing heists on trains. I really like that one. It's like a platformer, but it's kind of like a turn-based platformer. Uh, that one really stood out to me. I also really liked the I can't remember what it's called, but this the snake. I think it's the witch snake game. It's like one of the simpler ones. It's one of the first five, I think. But it's like you play snake, kind of with these like blobs, and you get like potions. That game, I for some reason I really like that game. It's really simple. It's one of the simpler ones, but I played a lot of it. Even though there's it's probably not one of the ones that goes as deep as other ones, but I had a lot of fun with it.
So thank you for that. And the house party one I hadn't got to yet. It's in the probably lower or deeper, or just I never randomly got to it. But the heist one, the cowboy heist one, um the you saying like with a question turn-based one, yeah, I understand completely. That's my how like I describe it as well. It's like it's turn-based because it is, but it isn't, but it
Yeah,
is. But no, that one I also, yeah, that one and the snake witch one I found interesting. The snake witch one confused me the first few times I played it, because I didn't really pay attention. I'm like, oh, it's snake, and then I not realized the things that weren't in the zone just went back to being enemies, and I'd immediately die because
yeah,
I wasn't
totally.
paying attention.
Um,
Um, but yeah, those ones, those two, I agree completely. They're fun. I'm gonna have to look at House Party because that one sounds. Uh, I like deck builders. I don't know what made me get into them. Actually, I probably do. It's probably Slay the Spire, but I like deck builders. So like that one, I should definitely go and check out. I'm going to. Thank you. Like thanks to
yeah,
you
no,
mentioning it. So thank you.
yeah, it's a really cool. It is, yeah, it's a neat deck builder. It's like kind of a yeah, in terms of it's a kind of smaller scale deck builder game that's just really well done. You're kind of like building, um, like every round is like you inviting guests to your house party, and you're trying not to overflow your house, and you're trying not to get your house to be too rambunctious and crazy. So you kind of have to balance it, and you're drawing the people are your cards kind of, so you're drawing them, like letting them into your house every round, and you're trying to get points and stuff from doing that. So and then yeah, it's quite fun. So I guess your friends are your cards in this game. So yeah, no, it's fun.
So, no, not to spend too much more time on UFO 50, but like, I don't know about you, but for me, I found it wild that, some of those games in there are easily games that could have been their own game or could have been expanded just a little to be their own games. And
Yeah.
like, I think this might just actually go back to the I don't know how it was done kind of thing. Like at the core of it, but like I don't know how that was done. It's like it's wild to me that so many of those games are such great little ideas that you could see yourself paying like $5-10 for, and yet here they are in
Hmm.
one big party pack. I'm still struggling to think of how to like refer to UFO 50 at the end of
Yeah,
the day.
I find it. No, I find it very inspiring. I think it's made me reevaluate a little bit, the stuff that I make, and the stuff that we make because like we were working on a game for a long time that we decided not to finish because it just wasn't working. And I coming out of that, I feel like UFO 50 came around right when we were kind of making that decision. So playing like 50 smaller games um, around the same time we were kind of canceling this like large project of ours was like, yeah, it felt really interesting. It was kind of like, why, maybe I just want to make smaller stuff because they can be really cool, and I feel like I might get as much out of making smaller stuff as I do trying to make giant stuff. Um, so yeah, no, I find it very inspiring, and I think it's going to uh, affect what I do a lot over the next few years.
So, not to dig too much into the one side of this question, so like, not to just to sort of like bar off some of it because I don't want to dig. You've what was said publicly, all that needs to be said.
Hmm.
Especially for me in this scenario. I'm not going to dig, but like From the perspective, I think I'm going to say that. Pretend that's the right word. In terms of like the smaller games, do you think there's more room to do something like UFO 50? And I don't mean this like specifically on you, but it could be for you. But again, the future is the future and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing is ever concrete. But like, do you think there's a place for like interesting um concept systems or however like UFO 50 fits into it? Like, do you think we could see more of those, or do you think people like yourself could be going down that avenue? Maybe not with 50 or a bucket load of games, but like just doing like the old classic like 4 and 1, 8 and 1s, or what have you, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I don't know if I would want to make like a collection like the same way that UFO 50 does or did. I
Hmm.
mean, one is I definitely not 50 games. That's wild. I can't believe they did that. But I mean, just in general, I think I not the takeaway for me isn't to make like a game of a bunch of smaller games, but more just trying to make um kind of more smaller experiences, just because I think that's what I actually enjoy doing more. So I think I don't think I'm planning to make like anything that is uh like games bundled together necessarily, but more just like make games that are of a certain scale that is something we could finish in like a year instead of something we're finishing in 5 years or whatever. I've kind of thought about this a lot just in terms of like scope, like growing scope and making bigger stuff all the time. And just in terms of, like in AAA games and in indie games, I just think there's a lot more space and time I think that could be spent making kind of smaller stuff that's just really fun. And there's not, I don't know, I don't feel like I actually enjoy trying to make really big games that much anymore after having tried to do it a bunch after Celeste. So I guess to me it feels more just like um, spending the time and resources that I have to make a bunch of smaller stuff, and maybe not always as good, but making a bunch of stuff that's smaller rather than trying to make like one massive thing that takes years. I think it's just become more appealing to me over time, if that makes sense.
Yes, 100% I understand where you're coming from that. Like me, myself personally, for my job is a programmer by day, and I I somehow got myself involved in a several year long project.
Hmm.
Um, that wasn't supposed to take that long, but I'm the
That's how it
person that
goes.
I am when it comes as a developer. I go, oh, hey, there's a can of worms that says worms. I wonder what happens if I kick it. And it's kind of like that Arrested Development scene where it says like dead dove don't open. He opens it and goes, I don't know what I expect.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
basically what I've been doing for the last several years. And like the what was supposed to be like an 8 month project has ballooned out because I just kept kicking cans open and going, that's a problem. There's another. Anyway, so like I completely understand from like just the perspective of like mental health and burning out. I'm not saying that's what happened
Mhm.
with you guys. Just like the perspective of being on a huge project just keeps going and going
Yeah.
and going and just being like, I really wish I could just fire off something small and like the for me it's the little lizard brain would just be like, I would love some dopamine to say I did a thing and it's a quick, easy fix.
There's definitely that
Um,
aspect. Yeah.
but no, I completely understand what you're saying, and like, there's lots of other devs that do little things like that. For example, Color Grave. They put out a handful of little games, and I think each of their games is like a year ish. A Strange Scaffold does like a similar thing,
Hmm.
but Strange Scaffold's crazy in of itself. If you look into them, I think at one point the person that runs that company was like, yeah, we just have a game ready for release whenever we want to release it. Is that not normal? It's like that's crazy. But like
Yeah,
I
that's
completely
wild.
understand. Yeah, right. But I completely understand what you mean about just wanting to work on like smaller things because yeah, like from my own experience, it's a nice thing to be able to do. And I imagine, if that's also what you enjoy and realizing that's what you enjoy, 100% lean into it and just do what
Yeah.
makes you happy, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think there's, I don't know, yeah, just in terms of like what I enjoy, and yeah, what I enjoy and also what I want to do with my life. Like, I'm only gonna live so long, and I feel like I want to make more stuff than if I only make a game once every 5 or 6 years. Like Celeste is already, I think, 7 years old or something. And so I want to get into a position where I'm kind of making smaller stuff more for fun, um, because we can, instead of like one thing every, I guess, every decade or whatever. Yeah.
Like, yes, you know, and I'm not throwing shade at any devs here, but I imagine that might be how the Rockstar devs feel too. Like, you know,
Oh
making
yeah.
one Grand Theft Auto every 15 years or so at this point. Like,
I I would lose my mind. Yeah, that would be. I can't imagine. Like, yeah, that would be way too much for me.
yeah, and you know, yeah, I don't think anyone would fault anyone for that one. Now, Noel, I want to ask you this because you know we're kind of getting to the point where I'm stealing like an hour of your time, and I want to get to the point where I'm working you towards the door, turning the lights on, so to say. But I want to ask this first, regardless, and that is like your life outside of gaming, because you know you're a developer, but you're not like that's not who you are, right? That's not you know everything that makes up Noel Berry. So I'm like
Hmm.
wondering, outside of gaming, like what do you do? What do you enjoy doing? What do you do to relax? What kind of hobbies do you have? Like you can interpret that question as wide shooting or as narrow as you would like. But basically it's just like the question at its core is just like, who are you that doesn't involve games? And if the
Yeah.
answer is just it really is games, that's perfectly valid too. However, I
I
like
mean,
to at least ask.
it is a lot of games. Like between playing games and making games, it's definitely definitely a lot, like a big part of it for sure. But no, I like other stuff. Um, yeah, I've been getting into like, wait, I'm not getting into, but I've been enjoying like rock climbing a lot. I've been doing a lot of bouldering, and climbing stuff. I got into that, I guess. I mean, I've always been doing it off and on for since I was an adult, I guess. But I kind of the last few years, I guess since COVID, I got more into just like rock climbing, in general. Mostly just indoor rock climbing stuff, but um, a little bit of outdoor stuff too, because I live in BC and there's a lot of available spots to do that kind of thing. But yeah, I've really enjoyed that as kind of trying to be more physically active because since I work at a desk all day, trying to find stuff that isn't just me more sitting in front of a desk, which is very easy for me to do by default. So yeah, that's kind of a hobby that I've really enjoyed over the last few years. Is just something physical, and it's kind of a fun thing. It feels kind of like playing games, honestly, because it's like kind of problem solvy and kind of puzzly. So you're looking at walls and routes and stuff and trying to figure out the best way to do things, which feels, yeah, I guess it kind of works my brain the same way some video games do. So I like that about it a lot. So that's definitely one hobby that I've kind of picked up in the last few years a lot that I really enjoy. Um, yeah, otherwise, I mean, yeah, I end up doing a lot of kind of games related stuff, even when I'm not making games. Um, I kind of got into like for a long time I just made video games, but in the last few years I got more into like programming, kind of more engineering stuff, and learning more about how that stuff works. So I got really into kind of low level programming stuff, more kind of C engine stuff, and getting into like things like Linux. I got really into Linux in the last few years for some reason. So becoming a Linux nerd. Um, so yeah, those are the things I think of immediately. But a lot of it is around games and stuff like that. I like traveling, I guess, too. I'm just kind of rambling now, but yeah, I've been trying to. I mean, it was obviously not traveling that much, I guess, during COVID or whatever, but trying to do more things now that the world's you can again. So seeing places I haven't seen before, which I like a lot. Yeah,
So a few follow-ups for that one, if you don't mind me bugging you about that
yeah,
one. The one for bouldering, um, I don't know if you heard me laugh, and it's if you did, it's because someone else I spoke to made the comment that that seems to be what like
yeah.
all the game developers are
I
getting into,
know.
or it were.
It, if
I'm
you go to
one.
the bouldering gym here, it's like half the people are like VFX artists or programmers. It's really funny.
Um, I'm curious, and I don't know how you're going to answer this, so feel free to answer however you want. But like, why? What? Like, do you have an idea how or why that just seems to be a
I
fad or
I
what?
honestly I think it's kind of a nerdy sport. I think it's kind of like like literally like you're it's like problem solving and you're looking at it's you're looking at these challenges on the wall and trying to solve them and trying to do them, and there's the physical aspect to it, obviously, like that's a huge part of it, is trying to do it physically, but there's a lot of it that's kind of like, how do I maneuver this and what do I do here, and it's just like a fun, it feels kind of like a game, like a video game, I guess. So I honestly think it's just like kind of a nerdy sport, and so it probably attracts, that's why half the people that I interact with at climbing are, yeah, VFX artists or programmers or game developers or whatever, because they all like that kind of stuff.
So thank you for putting it that way. That's scary because look, I know you weren't trying to sell me the horse, but I kind of want to. I'm thinking I want to buy the horse now. So
I
like, thank you, but not thank you. I don't know, but it makes sense what you're saying. Thank you for putting it into that logic, that frame of mind. I am also curious because you mentioned traveling. I'm wondering, like, uh, oh, if you have like a place you really enjoyed going to, or if you are having a place that you're like looking forward to going to. And you can answer that however you would like, but like just on the topic of travel, figured it would be a good thing to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, not anywhere in particular. I've just really liked. I mean, like before Celeste, I hadn't really traveled outside of Canada at all. I mean, America a little bit for like conferences and stuff, but I hadn't traveled and seen other places very much. So yeah, just trying to see other parts of the world that I'm not used to. Um, so I'm not super picky, but yeah, I mean, I went to Japan, which is really fun, and kind of like, I guess because I liked Nintendo stuff growing up and a lot of Japanese media growing up, that felt really cool. So I went there and I bicycled. I like bicycling a lot, actually. I didn't bring that up when I was talking, but I like bicycling quite a bit. So I bicycled across some of Japan when I was there a few years ago, which was really fun. It was really nice for that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, no, I just like seeing other places and stuff, especially since, yeah, I didn't really travel outside of Canada at all growing up. So yeah, seeing other places is cool.
So, thank you for that. And like, I, I understand what you're saying. Like especially if you haven't really left Canada or left, if I can make it even more of like a broader statement, left like the Western world, quote
Yeah,
unquote,
yeah, North
what have you.
America especially.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So like, yeah, no, I definitely understand that, and like the draw to do that. Myself personally, I'm on paper looking to try and work out Japan next year myself as well. So like,
Mm.
I completely understand at least half of the things that would have made you want to look into it. As
Yeah.
someone that grew up with Nintendo and Japanese media and all that fun stuff. So I said that way more dismissively or what have you than it intended to come out. But like I just know what you mean by that one. So
Yeah,
like
no, I
yeah,
hear you. Yeah.
perfectly. But no, thank you for speaking to that, and also thank you, I guess, for making me now reconsider bouldering because it makes sense in a
I,
way that I don't like.
I
Personally, I don't like. I'm all for physical
yeah.
activity. Just that's a thing now that I might look into. Thank you.
Yeah, I recommend it. I recommend at least trying it. It's fun.
Um, yes, exactly. We'll see what happens. I did it
Yeah.
years ago as a kid at like a day camp kind of thing. Um, and like, yeah, it was, it's been like 25 years. I remember it being fun and it'll probably still be fun, especially if the way you pitched it now.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 by all means, please. Sorry.
I was just saying that, yeah, I didn't do it a lot as a kid actually, but then as an adult, I really liked it.
Um, so, so no, um, not to, again, not to like say like, yeah, like, the lights are on, time to go. But like, as I said, at this, as I like to aim for 60 minutes. And that I mean, I don't like to steal more than 60 minutes of your time or give or take. I'm very bad at actually sticking to the 60 sharp. However, as I am turning on the lights and kind of moving toward the door here, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind me hitting you up with some random lightning round questions before we go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. Now, I do want to let you know before we get started on these, though, they are lighthearted, they're nonsensical, a little bit random.
Okay.
So, like, by all means, feel free to answer them as quickly as you want with as little thought behind them as you
Okay.
would like.
Got
There's
it.
no judgment. you'll understand what I mean by they're random and they make no sense once we start on that.
All right. Okay. Got it.
So, which video game character do you think is most likely to put orange juice over their cereal?
Uh, oh man. She's over there's um it's gotta be, I don't know, maybe Sonic for some reason. He just seems to go weirdo. Why would we do that?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you for that. Um, if the cast of your favorite video game, sorry, I'm now having second. Screw. I'm going to ask this anyway. Screw my second guessing or my doubting of it.
Hmm.
If the cast of your favorite game was replaced with guinea pigs, do you think you would still play it?
Um, yeah, definitely, yeah, definitely would. Yes.
Um, which video game character do you feel is most likely to call themselves a thirst trap despite having no business doing so, and why?
Yeah. Uh, that's a great question. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to answer this though in time. Um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's perfectly fine.
It's a
I
good I like that question a lot though. I just don't I don't know.
I apologize if at like 3 a.m. you shoot up out of your bed and just, like Luigi for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm
And like,
definitely
you just screaming at the top of your lungs and scare your pets, your partner, whomever would be around you, your neighbors if you're in like a condo or whatever. I apologize if that's what happens. Um, but outside of that, Noel, there's nothing else I wanted to bug you with in terms of the questions. And with that, I mean, like, I don't want to steal more of your time. However, if there was anything else you did want to discuss, like a cool game, something else you're working on or what you're doing, or something you just feel more people should be aware of, by all means, the floor is yours. As well, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also include in the episode description.
awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I had a really good time. Uh, yeah, no, I think you can find me at noelberry.ca, which is my website. And then I'm making games very slowly. Me and Maddie at EXOK are gonna make more stuff, which we'll share in the future. And then I'm also making a game with my brother called City of None, which is like kind of a platforming exploration game, kind of inspired by like also games I grew up with like Link's Awakening and stuff like that. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So as I said, if there wasn't anything else you want to throw out there, by all means, I will, I'll let you get on with your evening. I'll stop stealing your Thursday night.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much.
No, and no, thank you. You're more than I sorry, I always get into like a weird the weird Canadian loop where it's like, oh, I should say you're welcome to that, but like, you were the guest. I shouldn't be saying you're
No,
welcome for inviting me.
no, I
But
appreciate
no.
you inviting me. Thanks for having me.
But no, hey, I'm glad that you made time to speak with me. Sorry, it's just the weird Canadian kick is now like
It's all
really
good.
compulsing and
Yeah,
fighting.
struggling to get out. No, that's great.
um,
No worries.
but no, but again, like thank you for agreeing to do this. I appreciate you being here. So yeah, by all means, I'm glad that you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
So thanks again to Noel for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Ron Jankees for the use of music from the title track from Road Steep. And be sure to check out the episode description for links to socials, websites, and other means that will allow you to learn more about or support Noel and the podcast. And while you're doing that, share, like, follow, whatever else you feel makes the algorithm work. Thanks. Till next time.